It's Stephen King's birthday today. Happy birthday, Mr. King. To celebrate, here's a tier ranking of mine using books from his entire bibliography. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dave Musson, at Dave Musson on Instagram, and this is the place where I talk to you about all things Stephen King. Do check out the links in the description to find my range of Stephen King band t-shirts, like my Sailor's Lot Slipknot t-shirt, my collection of short stories, Once More Around the Sun, my newsletter, and a bunch of other things. But most of all, thank you for checking out this video. So this is something of a random special. I thought I should mark the occasion of Stephen King's birthday, and I figured it was about time I did a tier ranking. Now I know we've done a tier ranking of his post-2000s work, but I wanted to do one that encompassed his entire career. So that's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to go from F to S, which is the best one for reasons that the internet has explained to me, but I haven't fully got my head around. Something to do with grading systems in Japan for video games and something. But basically from stuff I don't like to stuff I really like. And for each grade level, I'm going to pick 3 books. So I'm not going to do an entire ranking of all of his works here. I've already done that. But I just thought it'd be fun to do it in the tier ranking. And I'll put the 3 together and just talk quickly about why I've graded them there. It'll be spoiler free, so you don't need to worry about having things ruined for you. And I would love to hear your thoughts as well. Let me know your choices for F. Let me know your choices for C right in the middle. And let me know your choices for S right at the top. Let's get into it, shall we? Here is my tier ranking of Stephen King books. So we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up. And if I can work out how to do it, I'll try and overlay a proper tier ranking graphic as we go through this. So we're going to start off with F, which is bottom of the ladder for me. Last rung on the ladder for me, if you were. My 3 picks are Talisman, Fairy Tale, and Roadwork from the Bachman books. So these ones for me, they just didn't click at all. The Talisman, I just found the whole set of characters annoying, and I found the plot really ploddy. The prose was really unnecessarily bloated, and the fantasy side just didn't work for me. Likewise, the fantasy stuff was what really put me off Fairy Tale. Loved the first quarter, but then when Charlie went down into Empis, just lost interest altogether, despite him having a really cool dog. And then Roadwork, I can see what King was trying to do with this, and I'm intrigued to read it again, which I will get to soon on my recently started chronological reread. But just having read it a couple of times so far, it's just too ploddy. There's not enough bite to it. The other Bachman books are really nasty. This one's more cynical and weary and downtrodden, and it's just a bit depressing, and not in the kind of way I like to be depressed with my horror. So there are my F rankings. Let's have a look at it on the graphic, shall we? Okay, so we're going to E now. So slightly above the bottom. And these are all books that, well, 2 of the 3 books here are ones that have actually climbed in my estimation, having read them a second time. So I'll go through them. We've got the Tommyknockers. We've got 4 Past Midnight, collection of novellas. And we've got Black House, the sequel to The Talisman. So 4 Past Midnight, I think, has always been the weakest collection of any sort for me, particularly the novellas collections. But if we're throwing in the short stories ones as well, it's probably still the weakest one for me. The Langoliers is just too long and too silly. The Library Policeman is just weird. Sundog's fine. Secret Garden, Secret Window I like, but just compared to the rest of the stuff, it's all a bit disappointing. Tommyknockers, as I've said many times, there is a great book in the Tommyknockers, but it needed to be written by a sober King, and it needed a really strong editor. There is some good stuff in it, and this has gone up in my estimation a little bit since having reread it. But even so, it's a mess of a book, and I think King himself would even admit that. And then Black House. I definitely prefer Black House to the Talisman. I still don't like Jack Sawyer, but there's a lot of this that I do actually like. It's just the first 150 pages. The prose, the style of narration is just so pompous and annoying that it's really off-putting. So it's difficult to claw its way back from that. But those are my E picks. Let's have a look at how the tier ranking is shaping up. So we're on to D now. And from D upward, these are all books that I, at the very least, enjoy and get something positive out of. Certainly would never say to somebody, oh no, don't read that, or oh no, I have a strong negative feeling about that. It's kind of edging towards the middle, but still lower half, if that makes sense. You know how tier rankings work. Anyway, in the D list for me, we've got Dreamcatcher, Nightmares and Dreamscapes, and The Stand. Now, I'll start with The Stand. I'm, I guess, infamous on this channel for not particularly liking The Stand. I can acknowledge that this is an incredible piece of work. And some of the writing in the first 200 pages is spectacular. And I completely get why so many people have this as their favourite King book and why people think it's his best book. Personally, I don't. I think there's a lot of stuff that is dull in this. And I think the ending's a bit fumbled. And it just doesn't do much for me. Dreamcatcher has really got up in my estimation, having reread it a couple of years ago and just thinking about it more and more. The core four friends in this are terrific. And the first half of this book is excellent. It just falls apart in the second half of the book. But this is such an important book for King, the one that he wrote while he was in recovery, having been hit by the minivan. He hand wrote this while off his tits on pain meds. Like, it's no surprise that it falls apart and is a mess in the second half. But it's kind of fun. You're never bored with Dreamcatcher. It's aliens. Like, cool. And Nightmares and Dreamscapes. Definitely the weakest short story collection. This does have some hits in there, like Rainy Season, depicted on the front. Suffer the Little Children is one of my favourites. You know, they got a hell of a band. The End of the Whole Mess. There are some good ones in here. But this is very much a kitchen sink collection. And King admits it himself. It's like everything that he had spare at the time, just pulled out of the drawer, shoved it in a collection. It's not as coherent as the first two, and the writing's just not as good as the subsequent collections we've had. But it's still good for a laugh, and there are some fun stories in here. Right, we're on to C now. So we're into the top half, and these are books that are definitely good, but for me, just can't go any higher than this because there's other ones that I just adore way more. So we've got Firestarter in my C list. We've got Holly in my C list, and bear with me, but we've got the entire Dark Tower series. So I'm not the biggest Dark Tower head. Again, a staggering achievement for King and a great story. I'm not that into the fantasy stuff. There are some great moments in the series, but overall I think a significant chunk of King's career has produced better work than the Dark Tower series. But I do appreciate all the connections, and the world building is just spectacular. And if you love the Dark Tower series, yeah, I'm all for it. Firestarter, I think for me, Firestarter is like the weakest of his opening run of books. It's a really strong idea, but I think it just gets a bit too bogged down in trying to be this sci-fi thriller, and it just goes on a bit too long. But there are some great scenes in there and some iconic moments, and Charlie McGee as a character is wonderful. And then Holly, like, I actually really liked Holly as a story. I don't particularly like Holly Gibney as a character, and I would have preferred this story with a different character. But the book itself, I burned through it, and I really liked it. And I think for King to be dropping a C grade book, 80 books into his career, that's pretty impressive, right? Like, this is comfortably top half of his works. Admittedly, it's probably right bang in the middle. But yeah, a classic C grade book, I think. And that's not a negative. That's a fine thing to be. Let's have a look how the overall list is shaping up. Okay, this is where it started getting difficult. B upwards, these are all books that are absolutely brilliant. And honestly, any of the books I mention in the tiers from here upwards, I'm recommending you to read them if you haven't done so already. And don't forget, I've done 19 reasons to read all of his books elsewhere on this channel. So do click around if any of them sound like something you might be interested in. So my B list books are Christine, Carrie, and From a Buick 8. So let's do Carrie first, his very first novel. Not long ago, I did my reread of it and offered lots of thoughts on that. It's a wonderful way to start a career. It's a breezy book. It's scary. It shows you what he's about. It shows you how much potential he had. And it's Carrie. It's got some of the most iconic scenes in horror. So definitely worth checking out. And then we've got these 2 books about cars. So Christine is like typical of mid-80s cocaine-fueled king. It's just wild. It's the one about the evil car. It's a great story of obsession, of friendship, of love, and of evil cars. Like, some of the kills in this are terrific. It's scary, it's pulpy, it's campy, it's silly. Like, it's a thick book, but again, you will fly through it. Then From a Buick 8. So this is post-accident King. And again, it's a book about a strange car, but it's very different to Christine. This is more really a book about looking for answers and not necessarily finding any, and that actually being an okay thing. This was like the 2nd or 3rd King book I read, and the first time I read it, I just didn't get it at all. I didn't vibe with it. On reread, I absolutely loved it. It rocketed up my list. It's such a thoughtful and clever book, presented in such a weird situation. Absolutely, you should check it out. So that's my B list. Let's see how the overall tier list is shaping up. Okay, we're on to the A list now. Really starting to get excited. So my A list books, my 3 picks are Gerald's Game, Insomnia, and Salem's Lot. So Salem's Lot, again, I recently reread it. This is kind of the real start of Stephen King as an icon for me. Carrie, sure, is iconic in itself, but this, his second novel, this is where we see him give us a small town. We obviously get vampires. This is scary in a sort of traditional horror sense, but also a brilliant look at people and the evil that men can do. So a wonderful selection there. Insomnia. This is a polarizing book. Get that? And I love it. And it's funny that I'm not that big a Dark Tower head, but I love this book. I read this book long before I did the Dark Tower and loved it then. You can absolutely read this without being into the Dark Tower and still get so much from it. It's a story of domestic abuse. It's got old characters in it. It's got weird stuff. I just find it really engrossing and engaging. I totally get people who don't like it though. It's a bit of a Marmite one, but for me, I think it's one that proves that if it clicks, it really clicks for you. And then Gerald's Game. I mean, what a strong premise for a book. You've got this couple who've gone off to their cabin in the woods to have some kinky games, be handcuffed to the bed, and then the guy dies. She's still handcuffed to the bed, no one around. How's she going to escape? And we properly go inside her mind and see all kinds of things. Just the psychological terror of this. It's like a little chamber play in a book. So good. So strong. There's my A list. Let's see how that's shaping up on the overall list. Okay, we've reached the top. We've reached the S tier. Again, I should really have looked at what the S tier stands for, but this is, let's call it superior. I know it's not superior, but like, this is the super top level. So my 3 books for the top level, The Different Seasons, Dolores Claiborne, and 11/22/63. Let's start with this one. This is the Stephen King book I can genuinely recommend to anyone. You don't have to like horror. This is a time-traveling political thriller with one of the best romances you will ever read anywhere. It's got everything. And this book, you will burn through the pages. Honestly, it's one of the best books I've ever read in my life. There are a few other Stephen King books that I just prefer to this, but objectively, this could well be his best book. And like I say, any reader of fiction will get something out of this. Different Seasons. I mean, it's one collection that gave us the stories that gave us Stand By Me and Shawshank Redemption in there. And then The Breathing Method is also a wonderful story. And Apt Pupil is one of the darkest things he's ever written. So good. A great starting point for Stephen King as well, because they're all shorter stories, being novellas. And you might well know at least a couple of them because 3 of the 4 have been movies as well, but such a strong collection. And for King to drop this so early in his career, really ballsy move as well. And look at that cover. I mean, I know we're not judging the books by their covers, but that is a cool cover, right? And then Dolores Claiborne. Just fascinating character study. A really strongly drawn older woman lead character. Like, I actually agree. Like, I don't often agree with the Sunday Telegraph because they're a bunch of right-wing, Tory, horrible people, but it says a compelling masterpiece, and I would agree with that. That's a very fine summary of Dolores Claiborne. First-person narrative, main accent, story within a story. So, so good. So there's the S tier. That's the top of the list, right? Let's have a look. Hang on a minute. I know what you're thinking. You've been here on this channel before. You're thinking, but like, he's literally missed off his favourite book. I'm cheating. I'm doing an S+ tier. So we're going one extra, and we've got The Dead Zone, Pet Sematary, and It. Now, of course, It was going to be right at the top. Perhaps his most iconic work, The Losers Club, Pennywise the Clown, multiple timelines, the best book about friendship I've ever read, one of the scariest books I've ever consumed in my life. Just everything about it is wonderful. It is just an absolute joy to read. Pet Sematary next. It says on the back here from Publishers Weekly, the most frightening book Stephen King has ever written, and that is accurate. But it's also the most beautiful portrait on grief and death that anyone has ever written, I think. Like, people know about this for the sort of zombie element, but this is a really engaging look at a family story and secrets within a family and what it takes for a family to stay together and fall apart and what happens when people die. It's just a wonderful book. And if you've only read this when you were younger, maybe if you'd become a parent, read it again, because you get a totally different view on it. And then lastly, to complete my tier ranking, of course, The Dead Zone, my all-time favourite Stephen King book, another one that I would genuinely recommend to pretty much anyone. This has got a bit of everything for me. A great romance, political thriller, some supernatural stuff, some horror stuff, great drama as well. This is a wonderful book to read during autumn or winter. And obviously it still feels very relevant given that Donald Trump exists and the political characters in this. Just so good. It clicked with me on my very first read. It was about the 5th or 6th Stephen King book I ever read, and I loved it. And I've loved it ever since. And of course, it's going to be top of my tier ranking. So let's check it out. This is what my overall tier ranking looks like. What do you think? So there we go. Yeah, I cheated. I don't care. It's my channel, it's my list. I can do what I like. Let me know some of your picks. Let me know one from your F tier, from your C tier, and your S or your S+ tier. I want to know a top, middle, and a bottom from you in the comments. Drop them in. Thanks for checking out this video. Do click around the rest of the channel. Subscribe if you like. Check out my range of Stephen King band t-shirts. Most of all, happy birthday, Stephen King. May you have many, many more. And thank you for watching. I will see you again very soon.